Hello, good Saturday, Ala. How are you?
Hey, Mustafa. Good morning to you. So let's just start another amazing session
Yeah,
for
last session we talked about helping vulnerable workers switch from a closed work permit to an open work permit, and we also talked about the CEC. Today we're going to talk about an NOC code. What is a NOC code? And we want to talk about this because when we talk to a lot of people, we end up spending a lot of time figuring out what their NOC code is. So today we're going to be talking about what a NOC code is. Okay, how do you find one? Why is it important for a PR? And then we're going to discuss which NOC codes are specifically attractive for Canadian permanent residency. So I thought it would be a good idea to first actually show, an example of a NOC code, how it appears in the federal government's website. So here is a very, common or normal NOC code, administrative officers. Okay. Now, the thing to note about the NOC code is it stands for National Occupational Classification, as you can see here. Okay. And it basically what it means is Canada has attached a 5-digit code to every single occupation that you can think of, right? Whether it be plumbers, doctors, dentists, truckers, pest control keepers, people who do roofing, everybody has an NOC code. So we want to show you, when you're looking for an NOC code, what a typical NOC code looks like. It has 5 digits. The first digit and the second digit is typically what is the most important thing about an NOC code. The first digit tells you what broad occupational category this NOC is associated with. So as you can see here, broad occupational category means business, finance, and administration occupation. So anytime you see a NOC code with a 1 in front, it means that it's related to business, finance, administration, and occupation. The second important number to note here is the 3. The 3 tells you what tier your job is, right? Here, the second digit is a 3, so this is a tier 3 job, and a tier 3 means occupations that usually require a college diploma or apprenticeship training of less than 2 years or more than 6 months of on-the-job training, right? So, as you know, in immigration, when you are trying to get qualified for federal skilled worker or for the CEC, your work experience that you're claiming points for must be in a skilled position. And so the tier tells you whether or not your NOC code is skilled. If the second number is a 0, 1, 2, or 3, it means it's skilled. Let me explain in a little bit more detail what I mean here. See, here are the examples of all the tier categories, right? These are the second numbers of any given NOC code. So tier 0, 1, and 2 is considered to be, and 3 is considered to be skilled. These 4 tiers, they are skilled, all right? They've given some examples here. Advertising, marketing, public relation managers, financial managers would be a tier 0, so any management occupation. And then occupations that usually require a university degree will be things like financial advisors, software engineers. Of course, the list is huge, but this is what we're talking about when we see that the second number is a 1. The second number is a 2, tier 2. They may require a college diploma or an apprenticeship. These could be, lab techs, whether it's a STEM lab tech or a healthcare lab tech. And then finally, tier 3 is a college diploma, apprenticeship training of less than 2 years, or more than 6 years of 6 months of on-the-job training, which is what we saw in the admin officer NOC code. But some other examples include bakers, dental assistants, and dental laboratory assistants. Now, the final 2 tiers are tier 4 and tier 5. These are not considered to be skilled jobs, and so they require. They would not get you any points for Canadian work experience and would not count for work experience to be eligible for the foreign skilled worker program either. Any comments at this point, Alan?
Yeah, that's a perfect explanation. So foreign nationals who are inside in Canada now, they can understand which tiers and which NOC codes will help them to get permanent residency. Only so if you are on tier 4 or 5, yes, for a federal skilled worker and then CEC, you're not qualified, but you might be qualified for the provincial nomination program, such as ONIP.
Certainly. There are some PNP programs across the country. There's certainly in BC and Ontario, which is the two provinces that we specialize in. And their tier 4 and tier 5 jobs, certain ones might be eligible for getting a certification, which gives you 600 points for an express entry profile. But today we are just going to be talking about skilled NOC codes because of their importance to the federal express entry program, right? So then, Ala, talk to me about how a typical call goes when somebody comes and asks you for, their pathway for permanent residency. Let's talk a little bit about how the job that they do becomes important and what type of conversation do you have with them to figure out whether or not, their job can help them get a PR, and how does that relate to the NOC code?
So we have two type of candidates are approaching us. So the first one, they did not do any research about the job they are going to, and then they call us after 1 year of working over there, and then they will find out that the NOC codes that they are doing is in tier 4 or 5, which make them ineligible to apply for federal skilled worker or CEC. But the other candidates that are approaching us, usually they have experience for NOC codes in tier 2 or 3.
Very few are coming up with tier 0 or 1.
Tier 0 or 1, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And why do you feel that it's really important to figure out what their NOC code is?
Because the tier, once we identify the tier for them, they might be eligible for the STEM categories or the categorized express entry, which they have a higher chance to be accepted, and then they will be for the permanent residency.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later. And I think I agree with you. So, a lot of our analysis depends on what the job is. When we want to suggest a pathway, right, it really does start with the job. Some pathways are available where you went to school matters. For example, the OINP's master's graduate stream. But more often than not, it is about your job, right? Both at the provincial and at the federal level. So one reason why we feel it's important to identify your NOC code is so that we know whether you are accumulating any Canadian work experience points, right? So if somebody comes to us and says, hey, I have 1 year of Canadian work experience, we ask them, okay, what did you do? They describe what they did, and then we ask them, do you know what your NOC code is, right? And at that point, if they don't know what the NOC code is, then we go into a NOC code analysis. Why? Because we want to know if their NOC code is tier 0, 1, 2, 3, so that we can tell them that the year that you worked, did you get any points for it or not? Or did it make you eligible for a CEC or not? Or does the exact nature of your NOC code qualify you not just for FSW or CEC, but also puts you in a category-based express entry? So this is the reason why NOC code analysis is very important. So let's do a simulation about how we help clients find their NOC code. Ella, throw out a very random occupation. Let's say you came and talked to me and I asked you, what do you do, right? Throw out a very random job. Maybe you can use an example from somebody you talked to recently.
Accountant.
Okay, accountant is a little bit simple, but okay. So what we would do is we would just go to Google and we would type in accountant NOC code, okay? And the first thing that would come up was the National Occupational Classification website, and we would click here. Financial auditors and accountants. This is very similar. Look, it looks the same as the admin officer NOC code that we were looking at earlier. Okay, here Ala threw out accountant. So this is the NOC ESDC website. This is the best website to look at NOC codes. One thing to remember is that Canada has switched to a 5-digit NOC code system since 2021. So sometimes when you do type in NOC code of an occupation, it may give you the older version, the 2011 version, where there is only 4 digits, right? The old one? Yeah. Where there's only 4 digits. Now they have switched it to a 5-digit system. So
the reason I said accountant, because recently we had a client that she wants to gain point as an accountant, but she was not an accountant. In her position in the job that she was doing, she was a bookkeeper. Right? And then she said that I will ask my employer to give me a letter that as an accountant. I said, no, this is not going to work, because it's not even your employer, because everything should match. Your median, the wage that you're receiving from your employer, the responsibilities that you're doing as a bookkeeper is not an accountant.
That's so. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So it's very important for the people out there to understand that the job responsibilities that you are doing with your employer should match one of these responsibilities or majority of these responsibilities below each NOC code.
Very, 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 very good point. And now I understand why you picked accountant, because you're very correct. Sometimes a person may think they have a certain occupation, but it might not be that occupation, right? And if your HR department hasn't made it clear on your job offer letter what the NOC code is, because sometimes they do, and that's another thing, you can always go to an HR department and ask them what the NOC code is. And if they don't know, you can do your own analysis and print out these unit groups, take it to them and ask them if they agree with this analysis, right? So let's take the example of financial auditors. How would you know if you are an accountant? For example, if you're a bookkeeper or an accountant and you're not sure, how would you know? Well, the first thing to look at is the example titles, and here is the index of titles. All of these titles, job titles, right, would qualify under this NOC code. Accountant, accountant supervisor, controller, accounting analyst, etc., even bank branch accountants, CGAs, CAs, CPAs, field auditors, income tax adjusters, industrial accountant. There's many different types of job titles that are included in here. But you'll notice that there is no bookkeeper, right? It just says bank branch, bank reserves, bankruptcy, trustees, budget. So the great thing about this page is that it makes it very clear what is not included in this NOC code. Comes down here in exclusions. So in other words, the website itself identifies what type of jobs may look very similar to this, and then people might get confused what their title is. So they do a really good job. They are very helpful by giving us an exclusions. So in other words, they're telling us, don't confuse this with accounting technicians and bookkeepers. Don't confuse this with financial managers. Don't confuse this with policy and program researchers, consultants, and officers. Those are different types of jobs, right? And another thing to look at when you want to know whether you qualify for the job, whether the NOC code, what you're doing is actually your NOC code, is you look at the employment requirements, right? So you think, okay, maybe my NOC code is this, let me verify. First thing I would look at is obviously the main duties here, right? But sometimes, in a practical work setting, a bookkeeper might be doing a lot of the duties that an accountant does, right? It's just the way the office might be set up. So, but that's not enough. You also need to know, okay, do you meet any of these requirements, right? So chartered professional accountants require university degree, etc. They tell you what type of job titles require what type of training to convince the visa officers that this is indeed your occupation. Like, so for instance, if you say you're an accountant and you don't have a university degree, maybe you took a 1-year diploma in bookkeeping, they're not going to agree with you that you're an accountant, even if you're doing very similar jobs. And then also what I would see is the exclusions. I would go to the NOC code, for example. Let's go to bookkeepers.
So Mustafa, one question here, it might be helpful for other people.
Mhm.
So if someone is a accountant of a mechanic shop, small mechanic shop, and then she's doing more than a bookkeeping job,
Mhm.
but she doesn't have the qualification of the employment requirement.
Right. I think, Ala, for a professional designation such as an accountant, right, it probably is going to be like not accepted, right?
Exactly.
So I mean, so this is why we're looking at something that's very similar. So a small mechanic shop, the person working at a small mechanic shop, if they're filing their taxes and they have like authorization from I believe there are some licensing requirements to be an accountant, right? So bookkeeper is somebody very different. If there is somebody managing QuickBooks and occasionally file taxes, I would not call them an accountant, right? And you can see in the main groups, keep financial records and establish, maintain, and balance various accounts, post journal entries, calculate, prepare checks for payrolls, submit tax forms for worker compensation forms, prepare tax returns, right? So you may seem like you're working as an accountant, same jobs as an accountant, but sorry, I went to the wrong one here. But it's not the case, because look, here they're saying to do this job you only need a secondary school or a completion of a college program in accounting, bookkeeping, etc. Right? So need to be very, very, very careful about analyzing your what you think your job is by looking at multiple things. So here it's making it very clear: do not confuse yourself with a professional accountant in this case. And if we go back to what a professional accountant does, then you will note that they do a lot more, right? They're setting up accounting systems, preparing financial informations for individuals, departments, examining accounting records, preparing financial statements and reports, analyzing. So, they may even act as a trustee in bankruptcy proceedings. So if you're not qualified to do something like that, then you probably are not an accountant. So know, what the title of your job is by exploring your NOC code. All right.
By exploring your NOC code, so it means that you have to meet the education, employment requirement, and also the wages, right? So it's not like this that you're working for a small firm and then you call yourself as a project manager or as an accountant.
Yes. So let's look at that too. So there is a way to look at what your wages, right? You type in Google job bank wages, and this website comes in, okay? Then you type in your job title, let's say accountant, okay? We saw this NOC code earlier, 11100. This means this is a tier 1 job, right? And then let's say you're working in Ontario. You'll notice that the median wage level in Toronto is $38.50, right? So if you're getting paid like $22, $25 an hour to be a quote unquote accountant, that should tell you something, that you probably are not an accountant, although the low end of the wage ALA can be 22. So this is, I would say it's one data point, but may not be, definitive. Let's look at bookkeepers. In Toronto, see, it goes down to $16.55 and $25. So there's a difference. So you should know, whether or not you are designated as an accountant. And so, Ala, why was it important for this person to call themselves an accountant? I think you should go to the category-based express entry and discuss why a NOC code is important. I believe, Ala, that your client wanted to qualify for the STEM category. Oh no, accountants are not in here.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up.
Mhm.
The reason that client wants to be qualified for that wants to consider herself as an accountant
Mhm.
was because she wants to receive higher hourly wage. By getting higher hourly wage, then she will get more points for the BCPNP.
Oh, so that was a
Okay.
PNP situation.
So yeah, that was a PNP situation, but it can happen as in the categorized express entry, which is our conversation for today, especially for business system analyst or even civil engineers. If you could check the civil engineers, you could see that they have to get the license as well.
Yes. So if somebody comes to us, right, and they give us, if they say they're a civil engineer or a business system specialist or an architect, it's very easy for us to know, oh, okay, your NOC code is in this list, right? Electrical engineer. Like, I'll give you one of our client, very good example here is in the trade occupation, Ala. Look, here in the trade occupation, we had a client who wanted to be considered under electrician NOC code 72200, right? So what happened? Let's go to electrician NOC code. Because if they were part of the electrician NOC code, what would happen is that they would be part of the trade occupation category. And being part of the trade occupation category, Ala, that means they have to score a 436 to receive an invitation to apply. This is where NOC code analysis becomes important for PR, right? And because otherwise they would have to score a 410 CEC.
510.
Sorry, a 510. But if they could show that they had, if they had a 6 months of full-time continuous work experience in the last 3 years in this NOC code, right, 72200, then they only have to score a 436 and not a 510. So then it becomes very important for us to do the analysis. Is his experience in this NOC code? And interestingly enough, for him, this was not the case. Why? Because he was an industrial electrician, and not an electrician. And so you must, and he was really kind of, confused by this. He's like, well, all the jobs that an industrial electrician does, an electrician
Exactly.
do, right?
I can do the same jobs. He was claiming I can do the same job.
Exactly. He said I can do the same job. So we had to sit with them and we have to show, well, first of all, it says right here, in the title, and this very rarely happens in a NOC code description, where in the title they are right away saying, don't confuse this with industrial, right? Then they give you illustrative examples of what an electrician is, right? And you'll notice in the I, there is no industrial electrician. It's only institutional electrician, et cetera. So it doesn't show up there either, right? Then it says, gives you the exclusions, and it clearly says industrial electrician, go and see 72201, right? So that's what we did. We reviewed these main duties. Okay, we reviewed these main duties. We also read this. This is very important, right? So electricians lay out, assemble, install, troubleshoot, etc., repair electrical wiring fixtures in buildings and other structures. They are employed by electrical contractors and maintenance departments of buildings and other establishments, or they may be self-employed, right? So we saw that, okay, an electrician is usually doing these types of jobs and is hired by these types of people, right? There's no industrial electrician in the illustrative examples. It does say industrial electrician in exclusions, okay? So here we know that, and there is something different between an electrician and industrial electrician. Then we went to the main duties, right? Now the funny thing is, Ala, all of these duties were also available in, right? So you'll see these duties are very similar to the duties for an electrician, but what's different, Ella? The difference is this description. Over there, we saw that they were employed by contractors, right? Here, and contractors and maintenance departments of homes, right? Here, look, it says they're employed by electrical contractors and maintenance departments of factories, plants, mines, shipyards, and other industrial establishments. And his experience was working mostly at plants. You know, he wasn't going and doing electrical work in homes. And so we determined that he would not be part of the electrician, and therefore he was not able to be part of the trade category. How crazy is that? You know? And so our advice for him, because he still has a lot of time left on his PGWP, our advice to him was to try to switch his work from industrial electrician to electrician, do that for 6 months, and then since he already qualifies for the federal skilled worker program, all he needs to do is just work for 6 more months as an electrician, and then he would be part of this category trade, and he would need only 436 to become to be invited to apply for permanent residency, and not a 510, because Allah, under industrial electrician, he has to score this point. Isn't that crazy? So yeah.
So this is the importance, I think, what we learn right now. This is the importance of every and each piece of information on the NOC code that you share is important, from description to employment requirement to the job responsibilities, and how it is important to talk to an expert.
Yeah,
right.
To do all this analysis for you.
While you're accepting the job offer, before accepting the job offer, or as soon as you start, because with your advice, our client is shifting to another job which was possible within his organization. Then instead of getting 510, he can get 436.
Exactly. This is why NOC code analysis is important, so that you pick the right job to set you up for the right pathway for PR, right? And so we hope that this quick illustration of how we go about thinking about these things was instructive to you. If any of you watching this video have concerns about their NOC codes, whether they are skilled or not skilled, and if they are skilled, do they fall in a category? If you are confusing them between one or the other, feel free to give us a call and we will help you walk through that. And then ultimately, Ala, I think the final thing is we may decide what our NOC code is, but you always have to get approval from your HR department. If they don't agree with your analysis, then none of this matters, right?
Exactly. Very interesting point.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me in this weekend podcast. Next week we'll come up with a new topic we haven't decided. Maybe we'll cover the OINP next week. So really looking forward to that.
Sure, 100%.
All right.
Thank you, Mustafa. Great
Bye-bye.
session.
Bye.